Hello, Algebra 1 students. This is Mrs. Oski with your first YouTube video. Today we are looking at Chapter 5.0. It's kind of an introductory into Chapter 5. Chapter 5, we will be talking about the absolute value function. So before we do that, we're going to do a quick review of the linear function. So first I'd like to just go over some vocab first. So we have four key terms here. The first one is function. What is a function? So a function is taking a set of inputs, let's call those inputs x, plugging them into the function or the equation, and then that produces an output of a y value or an f of x. Taking an input into the function, producing an output. The domain would be the set of inputs here. So the x values, set of inputs or x values. And then the range is the set of outputs or the y values. And then finally, the function notation is the way to write the function. And what makes this special is this cursive f of x, or sometimes you'll see a g of x or even an h of x, all function notation. Okay, going back to the linear function. Key characteristics of a linear function. Well, the first thing we know is its basic equation. The y equals mx plus b, the slope-intercept form. And we know that it's a straight line when we graph it. And also, to put this in specifically function notation, we can write it like this: f of x equals mx plus b. Again, m is the slope, b is the y-intercept. Okay, so moving on to our first learning target here. I'm just going to write LT for learning target. I can graph a linear function using a table. I can graph a linear function using a table. All right. So here is my linear function here. F of x equals x minus 3. I want to graph that, and I want to graph it by the technique of filling in this table. So what's given to you in this table is the set of inputs, the x values. So we need to find these outputs or y values. So let's jot down some success criteria as we go through this. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to take this x value and plug it in to the function here. Plug x value into function. So I'm going to replace this x with the value that's given. So I'm going to take the -2 and replace it or plug it in to where that x is. So that becomes -2 minus 3. Took away the x and replaced it with -2. And then -2 minus 3 is -5. And that -5 is our y value. So what happened there? We took the x value, plugged it in, and then we simplified it. We simplified the -2 minus 3. And that's how we found that y value. of -5 there. Okay, so we're going to complete that process or repeat step 1 and 2, step 1 and 2, step 1 and 2 until that chart is filled in. So we want to complete the table. So let's do that now. I'm going to take that -1, plug it in for x. So that looks like this, -1 minus 3. Simplify it to get your y value of -4. Now let's plug in the 0. 0 minus 3. Simplify it. You get a -3 for your y value. 1 minus 3 is -2. And then finally, 2 minus 3 is -1. So now our table is complete, and we are ready for step 4. We are going to graph the points. So my first point is -2, -5. My x is -2, y is -5. So go over 2 and then down 5. There's my first point. -1, -4. It's right here. 0, -3. 1, -2. 2, -1. And that makes our straight line there. Okay, go ahead and try this one. Pause the video, try that on your own. So I'm going to plug in, first of all, I'm going to plug in my first x value, -2, in for the x. So that is 4 minus 2 times -2. Now remember, order of operations, you have to multiply before you can add or subtract. So we're going to multiply first. -2 times -2 is +4. So that becomes 4 plus 4, which is 8. So my first y value is 8. Now I'm going to plug in -1. 4 minus 2 times -1. Remember, multiplication comes first. -2 times -1 is +2. So that's 4 plus 2, which is 6. Plug in the 0. Multiplication first, so 2 times 0 is 0. 4 minus 0 is 4. Now let's plug in the 1. -2 times 1 is -2. So that's 4 minus 2, which is 2. And then lastly, plug in the 2. -2 times 2 is -4. 4 minus 4 is 0. So we're going to go ahead and graph that. -2, -8, kind of off the grid somewhere up there. -1, 6. And then 0, 4. 1, 2. 2, 0. There is your straight line. All right, so that completes our first learning target of graphing a linear function using a table. Now let's move on to our second and final learning target for this lesson. We're going to move backwards of what we just did. So now the table is already completed for us. We need to find the function, the equation that produced this table. So that gives us our learning target. LT for learning target. I can write a linear function using a table. I can write a linear function using a table. All right. So let's talk about the success criteria for this one. I'm going to set this aside. Okay. So the first thing you want to do, remember we're finding a linear function. So remember what that looks like. That looks like that y equals mx plus b. So what are the parts we need to find? We need to find the slope, the m, and we need to find the y-intercept, which is the b. So we're going to find the slope first. So step one, we're going to look at our chart. We'll look at our chart here, and we're going to look for a pattern to find the slope. So find patterns in the table to find the slope, which is the m in our y equals mx plus b. So remember that slope is the change of y over the change of x. So m equals the change of y over the change of x. Y goes on top, x goes on the bottom. So we need to find that change of y first. So my y's are here in this column. So I'm going to find the pattern. How do I get from -1 to 4? What is happening there? How do I get from 4 to 9? How do I get from 9 to 14 and finally from 14 to 9? What is that pattern? Well, we're adding 5 each time. Plus 5, plus 5, plus 5, plus 5. A constant adding of 5. Now let's go over and look at the x's. What is happening to the x's? So how do you get from 0 to 1, from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4? What is happening there? You are adding 1 each time. So let's put it all together. M equals change of y. The change is 5, positive 5, over the change of x, positive 1, which you can simplify that down to just 5. So I found my slope is 5 there. All right. Now step 2, my success criteria. I need to find the b. So how do you do that? You're going to look where x is 0. So we're going to find the y-intercept, or the b term, where x is 0. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the chart to do that. Where is x 0? Right here. 0, -1, which means that my b is -1. There's the y-intercept right there. Now I'm going to put it all together. Step 3. Plug in m and b into your slope-intercept form. And we're going to write it as a function notation, so it's going to be f of x instead of y equals mx plus b. All right, let's do that up here. F of x equals mx plus b. So what does that look like? F of x equals, our m is 5, so 5x plus b is -1. And there's your answer. Okay, pause the video, try this one on your own. All right, so remember, success criteria. Step number 1, find the pattern in the table to find the slope. How is it changing from one number to the next? So we're going to start with this y side because y goes on top. So from 2 to 0.5, 0.5 to -1, and so on, you would have found that you are going down 1.5. Minus 1.5 each time. Okay? How about on the other side? What's happening here? Well, you are adding 1 each time. So your change of y is -1.5 over your change of x, which is just 1, gives you the slope of -1.5. Now, step 2, success criteria. What is the b? How do we find it? We look where x is 0. There you go. -1. Now, put it all together, plug it in. Step 3. F of x equals mx plus b. Plug in what we know. -1.5x minus 1. All right, so that's how you write a linear function using a table. So, what if you were given a table and you could not find a pattern? There was no pattern. Say it went up by 2, and then it went down 1, and then it went up 4. That would not be a consistent pattern, and that would not allow you to find a slope. So in that case, your answer, you would not have an equation. Your answer would simply be non-linear. Non-linear. Okay, so that concludes the lesson. If you'd like for more practice, you can do page 3 and page 4 in your note packets for more practice.